Welcome, everybody, to the Disc and Dice podcast, episode 20, the only podcast where the three of us talk about things on this podcast. Joining me are my co-hosts, Timmy.
Hi.
And my other co-host, Paul.
Hello.
Bit of a mixed bag for you today. I guess to get straight into it, Timmy's going to tell us a little bit about his adventures in Destiny 2, coming towards the end game now. Is that right, Timmy?
Absolutely. I'm in the end game now. So if you listen to previous episodes, you would know that I kind of got back into Destiny 2 after a long time and have been enjoying it. And last we spoke about it, I was just about to start playing Forsaken. So I have gone all the way through that now. And I'm into the end game. But now that I'm there, I kind of feel like the term end game does it a disservice, because there is so much proper story mission stuff that I'm still doing. It's all post Forsaken, and it's all parceled out in quest steps and little things to help you upgrade your gear and whatnot. And I'm right near, I'm at level cap and I'm nearly at power cap and all that. But there's so much engaging story and narrative and lore and all sorts of stuff that it feels very much like I'm not at the end of anything.
Quick question.
Right.
Is Forsaken the latest expansion or the only expansion for Destiny 2? I can't remember what's come out.
It's the latest one. So there's Destiny 2, and then the first two expansions were Curse of Osiris and Warmind. I got them both for free with the last big update. I don't know if originally you paid for those, but I didn't have to. I purchased Forsaken, which was kind of like the big. It was like a really big expansion. And if you play Destiny now, all of the loading screens kind of like say Forsaken, regardless of whether you purchased it or not. So it's what the game is now. However, next month, so very start of October, we are going to have what's it called? I've just blanked on the name of the new expansion, but it's the big next expansion, again purchased. It's going to be the first one since Bungie have been self-publishing.
Right.
So it's kind of exciting to see where Destiny is going to go with this one. But Forsaken is the last big expansion.
I'm curious, Timmy. One thing that some of these games suffer at endgame is that it can take the story and the lore can take a bit of a backseat when players start to have more established characters and they begin sort of looking into maxing out their stats and really just trying to get the best gear and overlooking all that. You mentioned that you're still quite engaged with the story, but is there like an offset for you? Is there a point at which you sort of you might think you stopped caring about the story, or have you had moments of that yet?
I think a strength of Destiny is that they kind of have a best of both worlds kind of scenario. Like in my clan, and so we have like a group chat, and I see a lot of the guys in there are kind of the first group that you talked about, in that they're just doing everything for the loot. They just want the best possible gear. They discuss the best kind of runes to equip to get the exact rewards they want and all this sort of stuff. And then there's plenty there if you want to delve into the lore and stuff. I feel like I'm unlocking more lore now than I was during the story, because when you're doing the story, they're kind of delivering the narrative to you and you're playing through it. Now that that's done, I am still doing that in some missions. I wouldn't be surprised if those wrap up kind of soon as well. But I'm unlocking heaps of lore that I'm kind of keening up to start delving into the search it out and read up the lore yourself side of things.
In terms of the end game, does it have, like, I'm kind of thinking of MMOs in general here. There's often that feeling with MMOs where the game doesn't start until end game. It's when we talk about end game in single player games, it's often like this is the last bit before you're done. Whereas in MMOs, it's kind of like end game is the bit where you start playing. In some ways, is Destiny like that? Do you feel like leveling is kind of it's just about getting to end game and then you're really playing?
I don't know about that. I feel a lot more confident to try out new things now that I'm level capped, because they kind of let everybody just play with everybody. So when you first start playing Destiny, you'll be trying to do your bounties and stuff, and so you can get bounties from vendors that help you level up quicker or get better loot. And so it'll be like, get multi-kills with a power weapon, which is like a rocket launcher or a grenade launcher or something like that. And I am, this little level 15 trying to do that. But I'm playing with level 50s that are just flying through and demolishing everything. So I can't possibly get a multi-kill because they're so much more powered. So in a way, I feel more empowered to be able to do the things I want to do now that I'm at endgame. But I certainly don't feel like, oh wow, I wasn't even really playing the game until now. I have never been a massive MMO guy. I never got to endgame in World of Warcraft, so I can't really compare that. So I couldn't really tell you, to be honest, how it stacks up, but I can say I'm really enjoying it now. There's heaps to do in terms of story, narrative, lore, just like world building. Like the end of Forsaken took me to a place called the Dreaming City, and I just kind of like was there very briefly in terms of gameplay hours, and then the game finished. And in doing that, it unlocked the entire massive new area to play through, which wasn't available until Endgame. So it's like a whole big area to explore. It's got everything all the other areas have, like hidden areas called Lost Sectors to play through, its own bounties, patrols you can do, its own kind of enemies and whatnot. Again, really engaging, lots to do. I don't feel like I wasn't really playing until now, though, to answer your question in short.
I've always felt that when the lore or story behind a game starts to really, really grab your attention, I find myself jumping on the Wikipedia pages, like the fan-made ones, and just looking into absolutely everything that the fan base has uncovered and divulged for the games. Have you been doing a bit of that?
Not yet. I've kind of been doing like a little bit like here and there with some of the quest steps are getting very interesting. So in case that's a Destiny centric term, in the game when you're doing the story, it kind of it tells you what your next objective is, and you can see it on the map and you can go to it. In this kind of end game and throughout Forsaken, actually, you collect quest steps. So they're kind of like little things that go into your inventory that you can read and follow, and it will, take you down story paths, and it'll link to the next quest step. But you don't have to do it. It's not going to be an objective cluttering your map. You can just discard that if you have no interest in doing it whatsoever, sort of thing. And now that we're there, they're doing some very interesting things with the story. Like I've got this one quest step that says it's like a radio transmission that you can hear just flickering very faintly, and it's grayed out in my inventory. And I happened to open my inventory when I was standing in a certain place, and it all of a sudden wasn't grayed out anymore. And I realized as I got closer to the signal, that was reflected in the appearance of the quest step, and it was kind of like leading me towards whatever I had to do to further that quest. But of course, if I wanted to, I could have looked up that quest step. And probably someone has done a YouTube tutorial on how to get there, or there's walkthroughs and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm enjoying that they've tried a few different things here and there.
Right, that's interesting, because they're kind of making me think there of how like handholdy modern World of Warcraft is with its quests. Like you don't really have moments like, not anymore moments like you're describing there, where you kind of like suddenly realize how this quest objective works, because it's like whenever you get a quest, it's like you get your marker on your map, it shows you exactly where to go, like the things are highlighted which you have to do, and it's, I don't know, like there's positives and negatives to that. Like there were definitely some cases with older WoW where like it was so cryptic and poorly explained that you had to go to the internet to look it up. But I think somewhere in the middle sounds better to me. Maybe Destiny has that nice balance between not just, you're not just kind of following the kind of breadcrumb trail around the world, but you're also not having to use like wikis to find out how to play the game.
Yeah, I think so far in my experience, Destiny has struck a nice balance, because I have some quest steps and I'll read the description of the quest step, and it won't tell me where I'm meant to go for that, or really what I'm meant to do. But then it'll have a little bit of flavor text. That's like a quote from a character involved, and I'll be like, oh, okay, that's kind of sounding like I need to go to this planet, or sounds like they need me to do this. Some of them, I feel like I'm pretty likely to look up in not too much time, just so I know what I'm doing, because it is a big world and I don't want to waste too much time. But I think as well, if for the really dedicated players who are just keen to do everything, a lot of it is stuff that you can stumble across, and then if you do something that triggers your quest step, it will pop up on the screen as well. So the one with the signal didn't, because I didn't actually trigger anything. I was just close to where I needed to be, which is cool. But if I had a quest step that was like I had to loot a certain lost sector, and I just happened to do that lost sector without realizing it was related to the quest step, it would pop up and be like, hey, you've started doing this now. Do you want to try and check out what the next part of that is?
In terms of, like, another thing I'm thinking of is like character customization in terms of your appearance is a massive part of like every MMO. It's like such a big deal. Like what your character looks like, pretty much as important as what your character's stats are. I'm just curious how Destiny handles that. So like WoW transitioned to this system of what they called transmogrifying gear. So basically once you got a piece of gear, you had collected its appearance forever, and then you could basically use its appearance on any piece of gear that you got in future. So, if you had like a cool set of armor which was no longer strong, you could still display that armor even though the gear you had better stats, if that makes sense. I'm curious how, like, what does Destiny do? Does it do anything interesting in terms of customization for the appearance of your character?
So right now, that's something that I feel like has come into play a lot more for me now that I'm endgame. Because what you can do, you can't just have the appearance of one armor you've got with the stats of another one necessarily. And a lot of the armor looks very similar. So, like, people who play will know that in the Warlock class, there are countless armors called Prophet Snow, and as you're leveling up, you're getting high-level versions of that all the time. It always comes in like a slightly different color and stuff like that. So, first of all, you can use shaders to color your armor. You have to color each part individually, like the helmet, or your torso, or your gauntlets, or your boots. And the shaders aren't like, I want everything to be purple. The shaders are all like 4 color sets, and they apply to armor in predetermined ways. So a color set that might be like black, white, purple, and gray on one set of armor might look mostly purple with black and white trim, or on another one, it might be mostly white with black and purple trim.
Okay.
So it's interesting kind of mixing and matching like that. But now that I'm at endgame and I'm kind of accruing resources very, very quickly, because they become much more common in like the crates you're looting and your rewards and stuff, depending on what you're doing on planets and bounties and all these sorts of things. What you can do is you have armor you like and you get something stronger. It's not only about appearance, because each armor has different perks. So I try to hold on to armor that has perks for hand cannons and pulse rifles, because those are what I like to use. So I might get something else that either doesn't look as cool or doesn't have the perks I like, but is a lot stronger. And what I can do is infuse my current armor with that armor. So it breaks down the armor that I want the power level of, and my armor assumes that power level while maintaining its appearance and its perks, but it costs me resources to do that. So depending on what kind of, whether it's, and this goes for weapons as well, by the way. So depending on what kind of piece of equipment it is, and depending on like where it comes from, because like some of them are tagged with the Forsaken logo, some of them are tagged with like the Osiris stuff, and just to show what sets they come from. And Osiris is all based on Mercury, so if you're infusing something from Mercury, you will need a lot of the resources that come from there. And Forsaken is all on the Tangled Shore of the Dreaming City, so you'll need I think, what is it, the etheric, they're like these orange plants, and you'll need the right ones of those. It's not necessarily cheap, so if you keep doing it like over and over again, you're going to need to start kind of farming resources.
Yeah, right.
But at essence, it does allow you to maintain the appearance you want with the perks and the power level that you want as well. I have only started doing that since I've hit endgame, because before that, now that I've hit endgame, I'm not going up levels, and so my power level is only increasing a little bit at a time. Whereas before endgame, you're increasing your power and your stats very quickly, and every time you go up a level, all of a sudden you have access to higher power equipment, and so constantly infusing that stuff becomes very costly, because you're going to be increasing over and over and over again. Whereas now, it's only when I get a really good drop that I'll be like, oh, okay.
Right, now it's like worth doing.
Yes, exactly. Like, you're kind of wasting your resources if you're doing it before endgame, I think. That's just my opinion. You can absolutely do it if you want. It just might be a little bit more time consuming. I guess we'll move on, but just before I do that, I just wanted to come back to a question you asked me before I played Forsaken, Paul, because you were asking about story and lore and my opinions on them.
Yes,
and you were saying that you hear from a lot of people that Forsaken is where it's at. And I was like, well, I think it's really cool world building and I really liked it all, but I haven't been like absolutely wowed by the narrative. And so I was hoping that Forsaken was going to do that. And I feel like it is kind of more of the same, but I do not mean that in a bad way at all. As in, the world building is cool. The new enemies were kind of like this. It's another alien race, and they're kind of all like cultists. They wear these weird helmets that are look like they're made of like stone ceremonial things. And they've kind of been influenced by a couple of people that look more like the Guardians, which is the characters you play as in Destiny. Kind of going rogue, and they're kind of manipulating this cult to help them achieve their goals. The narrative, again, I didn't feel was like anything spectacular. It was kind of cool. It didn't help that my girlfriend with whom I was playing has played Forsaken before and also doesn't care too much for the storyline. So if she was fire team leader, a lot of the story scenes got skipped. So I'm probably not, being completely fair on it, but
that is unforgivable.
Once again, I found the world building and the level design and all of that stuff a lot more engaging than the actual narrative itself.
Yeah, right.
Like, I didn't feel like I was missing anything by skipping a lot of the cutscenes, if that is an indicator of it.
Did you ever feel that because of like that thing you were saying, like other people skipping cutscenes? Did you ever feel that when you were maybe leveling or stuff, that it pushed you towards playing solo? Because I had that when I played Borderlands 2. When I played it when it came out, and I had loads of friends who were playing it as well. And a couple of times I played with them, but I really like to kind of get absorbed in the world and, listen to all the dialogue and kind of explore and things like that. And the 2 or 3 times I played with people, there was just enough of a difference in how they wanted to go through the story, in like the pace they wanted to go through it, that I was kind of like, all right, I'm not playing with other people while I do story stuff in this game.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think Destiny's strength is in cooperatively playing with other people, so I don't think it's enough to push me to not play with other people.
That's true, and I guess
I'm definitely going to go and look up the story of Forsaken, because I am interested, and I feel like I lost a lot of like the kind of I got the whole back end of it, but a lot of the it starts with a big character death. And I felt like that was so unimportant to the story on the whole. But I know a lot of people who are big Destiny fans found that really impactful. And I feel like avenging this character became so second fiddle to the story at large. And maybe that's intentional, but I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything. And even so, I still prefer doing it with other people. Like the gameplay itself is built for playing with other people. So I don't think that would be enough. And I suppose that comes back to my never having thought Destiny has that strong a narrative. I love the Borderlands story, and I think it's really cool. And so I think in that instance, I probably would be how you're saying you would do the Borderlands story on your own or with people that are committed to watching all the cutscenes. I think for Destiny specifically, didn't bother me too much.
Yeah, right. Okay, fair enough. I guess yeah, Borderlands is kind of like Borderlands almost feels like it's a story with the option to play cooperatively. Whereas I guess maybe Destiny is like a cooperative game with a story.
Yeah. Yeah. And I should just mention also, because I've just remembered, with the next expansion for Destiny, they are doing a lot to tweak the character customization and gear customization and stuff as well. So what I've just described at length is likely to change a lot, and it sounds a lot more like kind of what you were describing, where you have a lot more ability to have your equipment looking how you want it to look.
Well, yeah, maybe we'll be having a regular Destiny 2 segment with Timmy each episode.
Look, the way I'm playing at the moment, that seems doable. But anyway, that is enough from potential Destiny 2 segment for this podcast. Paul, what have you been playing?
Well, I have been playing a few card games actually, digital and physical. And yeah, I think digital card games might be something that at least you and I, Timmy, have a bit to say about this episode. But the main thing I've been playing is Magic Arena. So this is the digital Magic the Gathering game. And I think maybe we talked about this many, many episodes ago. This came up. And I think maybe we talked about how we weren't so hot on it. Although I think maybe I'm the only one who's played it. Maybe JT has. I can't remember. But I gave it another go. It's recently gone into open beta. So it was in kind of closed beta before, and then they wiped everyone's cards and you start from scratch. And it's in open beta now, and the full thing I think is being released in September and or September or October, soon anyway. The proper release is coming out soon. So I thought I'd jump back in and give it another go. And I have found it to be so much more improved than the last time I played it. In terms of yeah.
The one thing I remember you mentioning about it last time is that it all just moved way too quickly to the point of being not enjoyable for you. Has that aspect changed?
Yeah, I think it has. To be honest, I can't remember the specifics of how it presented the games last time, but I remember that. I remember feeling like it all went way too fast and I wasn't able to keep up with what was happening. So I'm guessing they've tweaked the UI, though, like I said, I can't really remember. But it's quite good now for that. The game moves really quite quickly, but it's really easy to see what has happened. It does a thing where, like, if a card is being used for any purpose, it kind of spins that card up. It kind of like zooms it in and puts it like right in front of you. So if kind of like an effect is triggered on a card that's sitting on the field, the card kind of rises up and gets in your face. So it's like if someone's about to take damage or gain life, it's kind of like just for a second, it's like this is the card that's doing that. So it does that constantly, which is really good. And it also has a really, really easy kind of mouse over thing, where if you mouse over any card, on the left-hand side, it kind of pops it up at full size with kind of all the descriptions of its abilities and everything like that. So even if you kind of miss what happened, maybe there's like 3 or 4 cards that triggered effects on one turn, it's really easy then to just quickly mouse over them on the field, and then you just kind of glance up and you're like, all right, yep, that had this, this one had this ability, that's why I took damage there, that kind of thing. So it's really good with that. It's actually interesting because I played a little bit of Magic Jewels, which was, I think it was the previous digital Magic incarnation, which they've now abandoned in favor of Arena. I played a little bit of that before I started playing Arena again, and the thing that stood out to me was just how slow that game was. and it really felt just like super sluggish moving through the turns, and it would kind of have like timers which counted down each time. So you'd kind of you play your cards and then you click next and it does a countdown, and then like now you choose your attackers, it does a countdown, now your opponent chooses the blockers, then it does a countdown, and then damage is dealt, and every countdown is probably like 3 seconds, and so it doesn't seem like a lot, but once you kind of add those up, it's really taking a long time. Whereas Magic Arena kind of, it automates a lot of that. So if it knows that there is no player who can play any card at all in the next step, it just moves straight through that step. You don't have to kind of wait. Cool. You don't have to click like, no, I have no enemies that, I have no creatures that can block. If no one has any blocking creatures, it just moves through it.
Are there any elements of duels that's missing in Arena that you kind of wish made the transition over?
Yes, there is actually. The one thing that is missing is a kind of deep AI experience. So they have built Arena to be absolutely, first and foremost, a player versus player platform. And I think they have even said that the time that it would take to develop, an AI that would be challenging for players to play against at different levels, that they would rather spend that time developing better features for players to use against each other and things like that. So that is missing, but to be honest, actually, I haven't actually missed that too much. I've been playing quite a lot against just randoms, which is something which to be honest, it's something which I don't really want to do in person with Magic. I don't really want to sit opposite a person I don't know and play a game like Magic, but in a digital setting, I'm kind of quite happy to do that. So,
in your experience, is there so far a bit of a discrepancy in the skill levels that people are getting matched up with, or do you find yourself pretty evenly matched or getting obliterated?
Actually, so far, I have found that I am probably winning 2/3 of my games. So
right, okay, that's good.
Yeah, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know whether that is maybe because I've been matched with really low-level players, perhaps, and because maybe because I've played a bit of Magic, I'm in the absolute bottom tier or something like that, and so I'm doing well. But so far, no. And that was actually a problem with Arena the last time I played. I played probably for a week or so last time, and I think I lost literally every single game I played. And most of them I lost like you were saying, I was obliterated with just decks that chained every card together, and there was nothing I could do, and I'd lose like 20-0 every single time I played. Whereas this time I'm finding that, yeah, like it feels like Magic when we play it. It feels like if I get a good draw and I get cards out on the table that I need to get, then I got a good chance of winning, which is really nice. The other thing to say there is that I'm just using the free decks that you get at the start of the game, and I haven't modified them at all. So when you first play, you do like a little tutorial, and then it gives you 5 free decks, 1 for each color, and that's all I've been using. I haven't edited those decks at all, so I haven't kind of tweaked them, adding different kinds of cards. I haven't paid any real money to open packs or to get different decks or anything like that. I've just been using the base starter decks. And so far, like, they have been really good for me. I haven't felt like I'm up against people who have way more powerful decks or anything like that. So yeah, in terms of being able to get quite a lot out of it without spending any money, so far I've been really impressed with it.
I feel like this is an excellent time for Magic to capitalize on the implementation of VR and their unstable decks, by like having both people use like VR headsets and handsets, and so they can do the funny things from the unstable decks, like throwing a card on the table and whatever it hits like has to fight it. You just wouldn't get that experience in traditional gameplay, but I always thought that would be a funny little thing for them to try and like add into a game.
I did actually think about that. I did think, could you do unstable in digital Magic? I didn't even think of VR, but I actually thought about it, and I actually thought that there's probably no way you could do it, because there's so much stuff in unstable which is like, ask a person outside the game, or take this card and put it, like, open a pack of cards and play a game of Magic with those cards and things like that. There's too much stuff. And I also actually feel like I don't want to play Unstable digitally.
That's
part
true,
of the fun of it is getting together and, like you said, literally having to, like, throw your card from 2 meters back and see what it lands on, and, like, that's how much damage it does.
And I mean, even if they were able to make it happen, it would probably be a really limited version. Like, a lot of things would get called out just for the the purpose of being able to play it. So anyway, it's a good little idea. Maybe maybe one day it'll get pulled off.
Maybe they'll do like because they're called like unsets or something, aren't they? Because they all had like the un prefix. Maybe they'll maybe they'll do an unset for Magic Arena at some point, and it will be like only for non-ranked games or something like that.
Yeah.
One of the other things Arena has, which is great, is that if you buy pre-made decks from like maybe 2 sets ago, in terms of what's currently the newest stuff, that all of the decks now come with codes to redeem them in Magic Arena, and I have one of those decks, so I was able to do that as well. I was able to redeem my newest physical deck in the game and play around with that as well. And for me, like, that's really the appeal of this. Like, I've been kind of bugging you guys about it in our group chat about getting into this, because I feel like it's, if you can kind of play with set decks, which is totally possible, and especially if we can use the decks we already buy in real life, to me it's just another way to play Magic, without having to deal with people who are min-maxing their decks and things like that. So I've really been enjoying it so far. There's a lot of rewards that you get for free, so you earn like a free currency, and then there's a paid currency as well. And I have earned a whole bunch of the free currency and haven't used any of it yet. So I haven't bought any packs. I haven't paid for any. You can pay for cosmetic things for your cards and things like that. I haven't done any of that at this point. I've just played with the things they give you absolutely for free, and yeah, I've been having a good time.
I'm not sure if this is probably a silly question, especially since I was part of the beta, but I never actually played the game. It's not just match-made games, is it? Like, if the 3 of us wanted to play, we could just go into a game with each other, right?
Right. Yeah, it has like a bunch of play options.
Okay.
So it has the normal Magic thing where I think it's like the last 4 sets of Magic are considered like, they're like the current meta of the game, and then when a new set comes out, I think the last one drops off. It's something like that. So it's always the last 4 sets are like tournament standard Magic. So it kind of works like that. So it's like you can play kind of tournament ranked, and you can only use cards from the newest 4 sets, or you can play just kind of, it's called like open. I can't remember the names. I think it's called like open, and it means you can just use any card in the game, or something like that. Or you can just do like, it's called like direct challenge. So if there's another player and you have their like username, you can just challenge them directly and play. So the 3 of us could just play against each other using, whatever decks and rules we want to establish for that. And yeah, it would all work perfectly like that.
So you've mentioned that you're only using like the cards that have been given to you for free, or that you've managed to earn from winning or leveling up or whatever it might be. The thing that is always the make or break for me with digital versions of competitive card games, and I've been experiencing this recently because I've gotten back into Gwent, which I might talk about in a bit, but the deck building and the managing your library, it's tricky when you have the physical cards in front of you, because you need to keep checking numbers and stuff manually. So digital has the advantage there, but I'm yet to find a truly user-friendly version that I feel like I know exactly everything that's going on, and I feel like it's not just clicking backwards and forwards, and you can really see everything going into your deck and how it's going to work together. How does Arena go with the deck building side of things?
Well, like I said, I haven't done a lot of deck building because I've just been using the stuff as standard, but I have had a look at the deck building side of it, just kind of having a bit of a play around. It looks pretty intuitive so far. So you you kind of have a lot of filters to play with, which is really useful. So you can filter by color, by type of card, by mana cost, by rarity, all that sort of thing. You can filter by set, so if you're building from a specific like release, you can do that. So there's a lot of filters there that you could use pretty easily if you know, like, all right, I need some like 1 mana spells, and now I need some 6 mana spells. You could sort of narrow that down pretty easily. One thing it does have, which is really cool, is it gives you like within one click at any point on the deck building thing, it gives you like the stats of your deck. So that will tell you basically how many land, how many creatures, how many spells, and it will give you the kind of column graph of the costs. You know how you have that thing, you can kind of see like the arc of your deck, so you can see whether it's heavy on cheap cards or whether it's got like kind of a nice even distribution across the mana costs. So that's really quite useful. So you could put a deck together and really, really quickly you're able to look and see whether it's balanced. You can see straight away that if you've got like hardly any 1 and 2 mana cards, you'll know straight away that like, okay, I need some cheap abilities here, otherwise this isn't going to work. So it has a few things like that which are pretty useful. But besides that, I haven't played around with it too much.
Okay, and when you are in the deck builder there, you might not know if you haven't done too much, but does it just kind of like give you the type of land that you need? Or can you say, I want to weight it more heavily towards this one? Or does it kind of auto-calculate what it thinks you require?
You get to choose, basically. So
Okay, cool.
if you want to, you can divide your land up however you want. If it's like a 2-color deck, you can split it however you need. The one thing that I haven't worked out how to do, which, as you will understand as a Magic player, is I haven't worked out yet how to change the art of my land cards. Which
I was literally going to ask next, like, can you have the full art cards? Because I know that's very important to you.
Yeah, you can have them. I haven't figured out yet how you get them. I don't know if they're only in packs or whether there are other ways to get them. I had a bit of a Google and I couldn't find that out yet. So I'll need to look into that a bit more. But
Because that's the most important part of playing Magic.
Exactly, yeah. But you can actually do that. So all of the different variations of land are in the game. So like for every set, it has every art variation. And as far as I can see, you can kind of mix and match them however you want. But yeah, I just haven't figured out the full art ones yet. The thing I wanted to add here actually about kind of collecting cards in your library is they have done something quite interesting in terms of dealing with the problem where in physical Magic, you can trade cards between each other. There's no option to trade cards or anything like that in Arena. And of course, Magic has the limit of 4 of any one card in a deck. And, in real world Magic, if you get a 5th card for anything, you trade that with someone else probably, because you will never ever have a use for that in a game of Magic. The way it works in Arena is really interesting. Basically, you collect 4 copies of any card. So if you draw it 4 times from packs, that gives you 4 copies. When you draw a 5th copy of any card, what you get instead is you get a wild card of that rarity. So if it's a rare card, you get a rare wild card. You can then basically exchange that rare wild card for any rare card in the game. Which
do you choose it yourself, or is it? Oh, wow.
So you go into just like the huge database and you basically say, all right, what I actually need is I need another one of this card to make my deck. So I'll swap my wild card for 1 copy of that. And, because like none of these cards have like physical value because you're not buying the physical cards, there's no marketplace to buy and sell them. There's no reason for them to like restrict you in terms of, which cards you're able to have access to. So I think it's actually a really cool system. Like I said, I haven't got into deck building yet. It's not something I've had a go at. And to be honest, I'm not sure if I really will. Like, we've played Magic for a few years now, and we've kind of avoided doing that, like our little group. But, if you are looking to get a specific card for whatever reason, I really actually quite like that system. It means you're not always at the mercy of drawing from packs.
Yeah. It's interesting that they've done that, just given, what Magic the Gathering has been for so many decades, right? Like it's their business model,
Right.
You got to keep buying to hope to get the one you want.
Right.
So it's interesting that I understand them giving you a wild card. I'm very surprised to hear that it lets you just pick one at like will, like that you can just look at every available card and go, that's the one.
Right.
But that's cool. I mean, it
but I
makes
guess
sense.
you,
I'm just surprised. Yeah.
yeah, I guess you also have to remember there that you only get a wild card by getting a fifth card of something you already have. So, you can't get wild cards without opening packs.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
That makes
so
sense.
I guess their idea is like they still want you to buy packs, and those extra cards you get that you can't use, they give you something to do with them. But yeah, they still want you to buy more. Like I said before, though, I haven't spent any real money. I haven't felt like I need to in any way, which has been really good. So I think certainly at the level that like I play Magic, and I would say like us guys here, the kind of level that we play at, I feel like we could certainly play Magic Arena without spending money, and probably any money we did spend, we would feel like we got quite a lot for it, if you know what I mean. Like any of the kind of decks that we were to buy in it, like we would get a lot of play out of that. So yeah, I was really quite enjoying it, and yeah, I'm hoping to kind of rope a few real life friends into playing it with me soon.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I'm definitely interested. But yeah, we got so many more of those unstable cards to unpack. So
That's right. We got half a box of those, don't we?
We can't completely abandon physical cards just yet.
Definitely not. But speaking of card games, like I said, digital card games is maybe will be a little bit of a topic of discussion for this episode. So Timmy, you have been playing a bit of Gwent, I believe.
Yeah, I went back to Gwent recently. I got straight on it when the beta came out for PlayStation 4. I really enjoyed Gwent in The Witcher 3. And I'm not normally one for optional mini games. Like I don't mind mini games in uh, video games. Like I think in the Spider-Man expansion episode, I mentioned I quite enjoyed playing the little science mini games and stuff. But often when they're optional, I'm not necessarily going to go and do them. And aside from a couple of story spots, it was purely optional in The Witcher. But I very quickly got addicted to it after initially staying away from it. So when the game came out standalone, I jumped on it, and the beta was fine. They kind of tweaked a little bit how things work, so it could be a little bit more complex, which made sense. However, now that I've come back, it's in full release now, no longer in beta, and they've made a lot of changes. It is mostly for the better, I think. Like it looks completely different. Like the appearance of the game was the first thing that shocked me. Like a lot of the card art looks similar, but the kind of the playing fields and everything look completely different, which is cool. The way you unlock other leaders is kind of like you've got a map, and when you win games, you get resources, and you can spend those resources on various things. You kind of head towards a certain leader if you want, or head towards like a chest to hopefully get random packs of cards or whatever it might be. So that's cool. But there are so many new cards now. It's almost not worth trying to bring your Witcher 3 knowledge of Gwent across. You almost have to accept that you are going to be starting anew. Like, obviously, you've still got the decoy card. You've still got, cards that look similar, but there's so many different abilities that it's like, a third of the basic starter cards at most if you have memorized all of the cards in The Witcher 3.
Yeah, right.
And I don't think it's a bad thing because, if it's going to stand on its own 2 feet, it kind of needs to have a bit more going for it. But just be prepared to have to learn. You're not going to come from The Witcher to this and know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, I had that problem actually when I played a little bit of Gwent, like the standalone, after playing Witcher 3, and I played more of it in the Thronebreaker, the single-player Gwent game, which we might mention in a minute. And I kind of had a bit of trouble with it at first because I I tried to play it like you play Gwent in The Witcher, and you really can't. That, like Witcher Gwent is balanced around you playing against like an AI that is kind of predictable and kind of just stupid. Whereas, yeah, obviously they made a lot of changes to make it like a proper competitive card game, and yeah, I'm not sure if I don't know if I like it, but I definitely noticed what you're saying, that like my knowledge of Gwent from Witcher 3 did not allow me to win games in Gwent.
Yeah. Like things like the first time you use a decoy in The Witcher, you basically you put down the decoy and you can like swap it for another character, another card at any point. Or sorry, no, you get a card back. That's what it is, isn't it? So you can put down a really great card, get your opponent to forfeit because you've scared them off, and then get that good card back with the decoy.
Yep.
In this, when you play the decoy card, you have to swap the card you're taking back for another card from your hand. So it's not just like a free get the card back. You actually still have to have spent 2 cards.
Interesting. Okay.
For an example, so like when you're playing competitively, like you started using that card to play a card with a really good ability that triggers when it enters the battlefield. So you get to do that twice, kind of thing. That kind of became how people use decoy more than anything else. Now, you spoke about Thronebreaker a few episodes ago.
I did.
And you weren't loving the fact that you were moving through the world doing this storyline, and Gwent was just the means to, like, you encounter someone and you have to fight them. And you didn't mind the kind of when you had a problem solving game where you had to do a certain thing or start with these specific cards and get through this. But on the whole, you didn't really love this combination of narrative and card game moving it forward. And am I remembering that right?
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
Sweet. Now, the reason I bring that up is because when I fired up Gwent, newly out of beta, it automatically took me through the tutorial. And the tutorial started out with, you know how when you fire up The Witcher 3, it starts with like that storyteller, kind of like gather round and let me tell you a story about Geralt of Rivia. It's a similar thing. There's a bunch of troops in the woods, and one of them is a storyteller, and he's telling them this tale of Geralt and Dandelion coming across a band of Scoia'tael.
That's exactly how Thronebreaker starts. It starts with the storyteller telling a story about Queen Maeve to like the guards he's with, and that's kind of the framed narrative of the game.
Cool. Now, the reason I bring it up is because it's like 4 or 5 games that you play, and towards the end of it, you have to make a choice whether you side with the Scoia'tael, which you kind of begrudgingly fought beforehand. Like they didn't believe you that you meant them no harm, so they fight you and you beat them, and then it moves on. And you can side with them against some northern realms that have just rocked up, or because the Scoia'tael fought you before and didn't believe you, you can side with the Northern Realms guys and fight the Scoia'tael. And it kind of just gives you like a look at some different cards, different play styles, that sort of thing. I loved moving through this very short story and having like A or B kind of choice at the end. And I was even able to go back and do the other choice because I wanted to see what would happen. And it affected the story. And I was like, this is such a good addition to the game. There's going to be a story mode. There absolutely is not. They obviously like want to keep that for Thronebreaker, so it's like an additional purchase. But I just found it interesting. I loved that so much that it's got me going, I reckon I need to play Thronebreaker, even though you really haven't been having a great time with it.
No, I haven't. Like I can maybe mention that now because I wanted to ask, when you said you've been playing Gwent, if you were thinking about playing Thronebreaker, because I went back to it in the last couple of weeks. It was probably almost a year ago on the pod that I talked about it, and my impressions were more negative than positive, but I kind of decided, all right, I'm going to go back to it. I'm going to give it another go because, it's The Witcher. Like, it is as we say, it's the patron saint of our podcast. So I had to give this game a go properly. And, well, in terms of positives, like, it was definitely better playing it having not played Witcher Gwent for such a long time, because I didn't go into it with the rules of that so fresh in my mind. So I started from scratch again because I couldn't really remember what I'd done. And so doing the tutorials at the start of Thronebreaker, having no real clear memory of how Gwent used to work, was much better. So I wasn't playing it expecting it to work like The Witcher, so that wasn't really a problem anymore. And the kind of things that I said were good last time all still remain true, that, the game looks really stylish with its kind of hand-drawn artistic art style. It's got great music, it's well voice acted. Like you mentioned before, I really enjoyed the puzzle battles. So when it kind of puts you in a situation where you have to solve a puzzle in, say, one round, I enjoyed that stuff. But I have thrown in the towel on Thronebreaker because there was just too much that I didn't enjoy. So all of the problems I mentioned when we last talked about it are still the case, that there are various mechanics in the game that I just find very, very unclear and more frustrating than they were worth. There are a couple of other just little annoying things, like when you go into those puzzle battles, which are often quite fun, it gives you the mulligan choice at the start of your turn, so it shows you your hand and you can redraw, I think, up to 5 cards or something like that. But it does that before telling you what the rules of the puzzle battle are. So often you redraw your hand and then the puzzle battle starts, you realize like, oh, okay, this is the thing I'm supposed to do. So then you basically have to lose to start again so that you know what kind of cards you need. And that kind of situation where basically they make you fail so that you know how to do something is not fun, And it's a simple change. It's like, tell me the rules of this battle before I draw my cards. And there's just little things like that. The thing that really did it for me was I probably put about 8 or 9 hours into it, and I reached kind of a point in the second act where I had my deck of cards. Like, I wasn't really loving the game, but at the very least I had built a deck that I was kind of happy with, and it was working in a way, when you get enough cards and in Gwent, and you can you get a few synergies going between your cards. So like I had the cards which do damage based on number of cards in the row, and then I had stacked in my deck a few cards which bring out a lot of low power enemies at once. So I could get a lot of cards in a row and then use these other guys to do damage. And I kind of got to the point where I was happy with my deck, and then for story reasons, which I had no control over, it basically took all of my cards away and gave me a completely new set of cards to choose a deck from. And I can maybe see why for some people that would be fun, because it's kind of like, oh, now I have to work with a totally new set of cards and figure out how to make these work. But I really didn't enjoy that. For me, that was like, I am kind of having fun sometimes with this game, and maybe the most interesting thing is just being able to build this deck I like. And now, completely out of my control, I just have my deck taken away and I'm told these are the cards you have to use now. And that's the point where I was like, I'm done. I'm not enjoying this game. Like, really, unfortunately, because of the setting and everything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the point I walked away.
I guess it's like, that's a fun challenge if you are enjoying the game on the whole.
Yeah.
But when there's too much stacked against it and they take that one kind of that bit of solace that you have, yeah, I can understand that.
With a world as substantial as The Witcher's, did you sort of feel like maybe putting it into a card game, the story, maybe wasn't doing the story justice, or did it just feel like it just wasn't implemented very well? Like, was it too ambitious?
This was another thing. I also felt the story just didn't grab me, considering it's like a setting that I absolutely love. And I spent so long in Witcher 3 doing like every single side quest and reading every bit of lore I could find, that I was just not even interested in the story that Thronebreaker was telling, which was really disappointing.
I mean, I'm looking here that it says it's a 30-hour odd long campaign, which is a huge slug, especially with a card game, which is, essentially a very repetitive mechanic. It's not an immersive mechanic.
Yeah,
is it?
They to be fair, they give you a lot of variation in terms of the Gwent that you're playing. So you're not playing. It's not like The Witcher where you're playing a standard game of Gwent every time you fight. Like, at least half, if not more, you're playing games with special rules or special conditions. So it keeps it interesting. It actually does quite a good job of keeping the Gwent side interesting and not just needing you to do the same, not just needing you to win 2 of 3 in terms of points each time. It gives you other conditions, so it actually handles that quite well. In terms of the length of the game, I had also kind of had a look at that and seen like on average people take around 30 hours. And yeah, when I was at about 8 hours and I just wasn't feeling any engagement with the characters or the story, that was another thing that I was just like, if this game was 10 hours long, I would probably stick it out, but I'm not going to spend 30 hours playing something that I'm not enjoying that much.
Yeah, see, it's funny that you say all of that because just like I'm still definitely going to try it out. Just based on the fact that like it's been even longer for me playing so like since I played Gwent in The Witcher, like that feels totally foreign to me now. And I've got the physical cards that came with the expansions, and I reckon if I went back to them now, I'd have to relearn the Witcher 3 version of Gwent. Like that's how far past it I am. So I feel like I've got a decent starting point here. And what you were talking about enjoying, Paul, with the having the deck with the synergies, that's something I found in Gwent that I have very quickly was able to notice a couple of cards that were working very well together and then tailor my deck to strengthen that. I like mine all kind of like buffed each other. So like it was like at the end of a turn, if this card is alive, add 1 to the card next to it. And then it's like if this card is boosted, add 1 to cards on both sides. So I would have these stacks of cards that are all buffing each other at the end of like each turn. And so it meant even though I was putting out weak cards or like, dealing with damage that was coming from my opponent, everything was going up by 3 or 4 points at the end of my turn as well. And it quickly became like damage control for my opponent. I could just sit back and do very little and let my score keep going up and up and up and up. And so the fact that you're kind of indicating that I'm going to be able to sort of still build decks like that for Thronebreaker is kind of appealing to me as well.
Yeah, like I really want you to play it actually because like I want someone else who really loves The Witcher that I know to give this a go and like tell me what you think of it. So I do hope you check it out. But yeah, speaking of that synergy stuff, I really enjoyed hearing then about like, how your deck worked and how it was like completely different to mine because like that's such a fun part of all these games we're talking about now, like Gwent, Magic. It's like when you either figure out by building or you learn from a deck you're given how it works, So like my deck that I was using in Magic for quite a bit was a black deck. And once I kind of figured out that, all right, it's got a bunch of these cards where if I kill these guys, every time I play another one of them, I get an extra creature. Then it got really interesting because then I'm kind of like picking my starting hand, being like, all right, I can kill 2 of these guys straight away, so that I'm able to draw it again next time, and then I can get like 4 cards out rather than 1 and things like that. And it actually kind of reminded me of the other game I've been playing, which is Keyforge, which I'll just say a little bit about because I've only played a handful of games since we've last played.
And I think we spoke about it a few episodes ago as well.
Yeah. So we did a big tabletop episode where we talked quite a lot about Keyforge, but it just kind of reminded me of the same thing with Keyforge because it has set decks. So in comparison to Magic and Gwent, where you build your deck most of the time, Keyforge, for anyone who doesn't know, it has these set decks, and you don't get to change or customize them in any way at all. And I really like this same kind of thing with Keyforge, where because you're faced with a set deck, the more you play it, the more you get to know it, and you don't get to do something like say, oh, I really like this deck, but I wish it had more of these cards. I'll just swap some of those in. Like, you are stuck with what the deck is. So what you have to do instead is you have to learn, like, all right, what is the best way to play this deck? And, and kind of that's how you get better with a deck in Keyforge, is not by getting more cards, but just by learning how to play the deck better. And yeah, you were kind of reminding me of that, talking about those synergies that like when it all kind of lines up in place, it's really quite a lot of fun to sort of see things unravel in the way that they should. When you've got a hand of cards and you know what you're playing next turn, and you know that it will perfectly complement what's on the field.
Yeah, but it's also like you've got that. It's the good kind of frustration when you're playing against someone who sees what you're trying to do, and you're so close to like setting off that chain reaction, and they're just keeping you at bay. And like, it sounds strange saying it's a good kind of frustration, but it's what makes these games like a lot of fun, right? Because like you're so close. Like, all I need is for you to not be able to like stop me for one turn, and I'm gonna steamroll you for the next like 3. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely.
And then there's always the post-match what if scenario discussion.
Of course.
If only.
Where the people who lost spend the next like 20 minutes going, I tell you what, if I had just gotten that, you wouldn't have been able to stop me.
It's always the person who loses, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
I've had that conversation many times.
The person who lost never really lost. They just didn't quite win.
Oh, that's
in another universe, maybe.
That's a really good way of putting it. Something I actually really enjoyed playing Keyforge was because it has those set decks. Actually, it's really good, I think, to play with friends like that because you can't min-max it. So you know, we kind of have talked before about how there's that perfect balance of it's kind of like the luck and skill balance. That if everyone has the same decks that are fairly equally balanced, then a lot of the game comes down to knowing your deck and knowing how to play it, but just as much comes down to what's the draw you get in your hand. And because every deck in Keyforge is kind of around the same level, or it technically should be, I just like that you instantly have that balance, and you're never going to be, worried that like one person has a deck that's steamrolling the other one because they kind of can't. So I think it suits that situation well.
Yeah, and like Keyforge has the system where if you are the type of people that like to stick with your own decks or whatever, it will eventually have a handicap system if your deck like never loses. It kind of like gives you a handicap so that it's a bit fair. But it's also great because when we played, we just kind of went, I keep winning with this deck. Here, you have a shot with it. Like I'll try this one over here. You have this one. And then, you get to have a look at, okay, so that's how he was able to keep doing that kind of thing. And, it's good fun.
Yeah. And I guess just quickly, lastly on Keyforge, there is a new expansion coming out at the end of this year, I think. So I think we're all looking forward to that quite a bit. And so, I think we'll come back to Keyforge when that comes out probably, because hopefully there's some new mechanics and new things to talk about.
Yeah, well, we didn't even play the last expansion, and they just kind of like introduced, I think, some new factions which have some different play styles. And given that it's not like you have to buy boosters and boosters and boosters, it's good fun. I'm looking forward to trying out both of those.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get into what I've been playing and how I've been going with my alphabetical mission in Steam.
Games. Welcome back to Disc and Dice. Now, in that last section, I think, JT, you barely got a word in, and especially didn't get to talk about what you were playing. So, what have you been doing in the last month since we recorded?
A lot, really. So much that I had to make a list about what things I was going to actually talk about. But I'll go over some of the more minor things first. Minor things that I've been playing and finishing. So I've... In terms of the Assassin's Creed series, because I'm sort of slowly slugging through that, just finished Revelations and have to say that that's probably my favorite in the series so far. I know I'm not too far into the series, but I just feel that so far has culminated all the good stuff from the games prior, especially Assassin's Creed 2, and I think it just sort of capitalized on that a bit, and I really, really enjoyed it. I liked the historical story. The conspiracy stuff probably is a bit dated now, so it didn't really grab me that much, but really, really loved sort of playing as Ezio. I think this is the last time that I'll get to play as him as well.
Old man Ezio.
Old man Ezio, still smooth, still a hit with the ladies. Another smaller game that I've
just
sort
before
of gone
you
on to.
before you move to the next one, I wanted to ask about Assassin's Creed. Now that you've played through sort of the big Ezio ones, I think you just said Revelations was your favorite. What was your favorite in terms of like the setting? Because I feel like that's such a big part of the Assassin's Creed games. So, like, was Constantinople? Do you think that was like the best setting for it? Because I really liked Rome in Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood.
I really liked them both, probably almost equally. Constantinople, I feel, just had a little bit more character. I feel like even though the two games are very similar in the way they look and the way that they've been made, you can tell the developers went to a little bit more effort to flesh it out and make it a little bit more interesting on the eye. I loved the Turkish culture is really, really cool.
Right. It's something a bit different as well, I think. Like, it's like ancient, even though it's not ancient Rome, it's still like kind of Rome is a setting that has been done in lots of different kind of incarnations. But yeah, I feel like you say, the kind of Turkish culture is not something that you see so often.
Yeah, and I loved seeing all, like the minor sort of factions that you could play around with, like, the gypsies and whatnot. Was really, really cool. And I just really liked it. I think it just sort of, it didn't do anything majorly new from 2, like a few little things, but it just capitalized on the stuff prior and just made it a little bit better. I didn't really like the siege things. I remember you sort of mentioning that you didn't really delve into them too much, and I found that they were probably...
That's like the tower defense, weird tower defense thing, yeah.
Yeah, and also the assassin mini game it's sort of like you're sending your assassins on missions around the world.
That's
and
right.
You can take control of countries and stuff. I didn't really feel that much need for it. I mean, I maxed out all my my subordinates, and once I had that, like, I didn't really feel like I needed to make a huge amount of money from the world game.
Yeah, I really liked was it 2 that had the villa, and you kind of upgrade your villa as sort of, that was almost the mini game. And yeah, I remember not being super into the kind of sending your assassins all over the world thing. It just it was a bit much.
I liked the missions within the city, and then you doing the story missions with them, and then sort of fleshing them out that way. But the other, it just felt tacked on. It felt like a mobile game that you would download, and then it just was in the actual game. So I didn't really delve into that, but everything else I really liked.
Yeah, definitely like that.
Again, just before we move on from Assassin's Creed quickly, I just wanted to get your guys' opinions, because generally the Ezio trilogy is very well remembered. Most people agree that 2 and Brotherhood are kind of like the zenith of the series, even though they've added a lot and done a lot since. Those are the only ones that generally everybody agrees are great. I'm really surprised that they've never tried to stick with the character again, like they did with Ezio, because like the character growth was something that was really appealing about that.
Or
and
even the bloodline. I think it could have been cool to have the Ezio bloodline, which it vaguely did, but it didn't really. Yeah.
But it's because it was the real time stuff that cancelled out the bloodline rubbish. But like, because in real time, the person who was accessing his ancestral memories was no longer in play after.
Yeah, it was no longer, what's his name, like.
Oh, after 3. No, he was in 3.
He's in 3. Yeah. Desmond. Yeah, that's right.
But even so, you just think, like, they had such success with getting everybody on board to follow Ezio, and he's remembered so fondly, and they've just been starting anew every single time since, and the series has never been as respected again. I'm just shocked that they haven't tried to create another Ezio situation.
Yeah, that's like, I guess the settings they've chosen have been too far apart. You know, even like what is it, like French or American Revolution to French Revolution? It's like
they kind of just want to do all history, and it's
yeah,
it's a bit much.
I think they're sort of. It feels like, to be honest, like I think you make a good point, Timmy. But I feel like the thing that makes them decide it is like they pick the era first, which I actually think is the right way to do it. Like rather than getting like 3 games set in revolutionary France, so that I could have a trilogy with one character, I would probably prefer 3 separate games. But I think, I don't know, I still think what you said stands. Like, it is interesting that they haven't tried to recreate at least that trilogy feel, even if it's not even the same character, you know? Just creating that feel of like, this game is the next one in like that story.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I'd never played Brotherhood or Revelations, and I loved number 2. I came back at Black Flag when it was a setting that I thought was really interesting and something I hadn't played before. So you're absolutely right about doing the settings, I suppose. But like, there is also like Renaissance, like Europe works because it was such a period of change, so they can do so much, you know, going from various parts of Italy and then Constantinople and all of that kind of stuff. Like, you could do something coming off of Black Flag when you've got this dashing, charming pirate character, and it's like the lawlessness. But if you look up Pirates in the Caribbean and all of that, that period of history is actually remarkably short.
Yeah.
So they could have done something interesting there.
Like, they could have done, I guess, with the French stuff, they could have gone from the Revolution into the Napoleonic era. That would have probably been like I haven't played Unity, so I don't actually know whether it ends up there anyway. But you could have gone from like the French Revolution to the Napoleonic Wars, I guess, and kind of kept a character going through. But then it's like, is that more interesting than ancient Egypt? Probably not. So yeah, because you quite enjoyed Origins, didn't you?
I enjoyed it until I just stopped playing, like I do with all of the Assassin's Creed games now. They're so massive and there's so much to do, and they haven't really changed anything up in any substantial way in like 10 years. So eventually the thing is, like, because there's so much of it, a new game comes out that I want to play, and I go, I will definitely come back to this. I know I will this time. This time it will be different. And I play the short game that I went away from Assassin's Creed 4, and then I never go back because I feel like I got what I wanted out of it.
Yeah.
And just quickly as well, one of the things with the Assassin's Creed series is, you know, obviously you can blame it on the publisher or what have you, but it is a daunting series. There's a lot of content. There's a lot of downloadable content. There's a lot of supplementary content that across multiple devices, multiple platforms, and you know, if you want to really, really get the most out of it, I don't think you have to do all that supplementary stuff. But it also, you know, sometimes I know for me that when I'm going to Assassin's Creed 1, 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, and then I look back and I'm like, oh, there's all these other smaller games that are set in between or around those eras that I'm not playing, and like I sort of feel like I'm missing out by not playing them. But at the same time, it's like I don't have enough money or time to ever get through this series completely. So yeah,
and it does kind of feel like they kind of stopped caring about the games being a coherent series as well, though. Like, I think right now, the way to play Assassin's Creed is to go, I find pirates interesting, so I'll play the pirate one. Or, oh, they just did an ancient Greek one. I'll do that one. It's kind of got some mythology in it. But I don't really care about, you know, like London in the 1800s, so I'll skip that one. You know, like, but they don't seem to have the joining story. Like, they kind of bollocksed that up with 3 and then didn't ever try again. So
yeah, the last one I played was Black Flag, and the way I approached that was I literally skipped through all of the real world stuff, because I was just like, I am going to play this as if it is just a game set in like this pirate setting, and I'm going to like, but I almost feel like Assassin's Creed they should just completely ditch the idea of like the real world animus, ancestral memory thing, because I was just like, I'm going to completely skip that. Like, I'm going to skip all the dialogue. I'm going to skip every time it puts me out to the real world and just get straight back into the game. And I'm just going to pretend that whole side of it doesn't exist, because it's just so unnecessary.
And the thing is, you can tell that the developers, or like the majority of the team, realize it's pointless, but there's somebody there, somebody at the top of the food chain going, but that's what makes Assassin's Creed Assassin's Creed. Because in Origins, they have that, but the game doesn't start with it. And when it happened the first time, I was like, oh crap, I'm so far into this game and we're doing this. That's really weird.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the next time it happened again, I'd forgotten that it had already happened once. It's so inconsequential. They barely even do the thing where if you don't do the thing right, it goes separating from the memory. It's normally that you just die now. Like, they've basically done away with it.
Right,
so
yeah.
They should just commit. They shouldn't do, you're a pirate, but also you're an intern for Google. No one cares about the second part. Just make a game about pirates.
And, there are completionists out there that sweat bullets at just the mention of the Assassin's Creed franchise, because the amount of stuff you have to do everything is just, I'm really not sure anyone has enough time in their life to really do it all. So.
Right, and I think that might be something we come back to in a minute when we talk about your alphabetical games challenge, JT. But what else have you been playing besides Assassin's Creed?
I played a tiny bit of a game as part of my the alphabetical quest called Dangerous Golf, which was a little bit of fun. I played it with my partner's son. It's basically if you remember the game, is it Burnout, where you used to, there was a game mode in Burnout 3 or some such, where you would just crash the car into a situation and to try and get as many points as you can.
It was so good.
Yeah, it was amazing. This is that, except it's golf, and so you putt or you tee off in some kind of expensive setting. So maybe it's like a dining room with champagne chandeliers and flutes everywhere and paintings and things that are worth money. And there's the hole at the other end of the map, and you basically have to putt it into the hole, except you need to do as much damage as you can before it goes in the hole. And it's a cool little sort of like fun party game, and it's cool to see that mechanic from Burnout sort of come back in a different sort of setting, which I really liked. Next, I did give the Dead Island Riptide, which is the sequel to Dead Island from a little while ago, which I really liked because I played that with some friends from work in like the 4-player co-op, and it was great. Like I had so much fun playing that game with them. However, now there's not many people playing it. I don't know many people who have Dead Island Riptide, so I was just playing it solo. And I probably played it for about 2 hours before I realized it was essentially the same game with the same bugs, the same game mechanics, not even really a new setting. So I actually ended up turfing that pretty quickly. Did either of you play Dead Island at all?
I've not played either of them.
No,
but
not
given that you really enjoyed the first one from what you just said, was it really just that like you felt like you'd done it all before, or is it that like with time the game hasn't necessarily aged very well? Like or is it solely because you liked playing it with friends and now you were trying it on your own that you?
It was the same game that had a lot of inherent problems that really bothered me, but they didn't bother me so much in the first game because I was playing with friends. It was easily overlooked. For instance, it's an open world game. It's basically, I'm not sure if it's by the same developers as Dying Light. It might be. It's very similar sort of game. But you spawn into the game when you start up. Every time you load into the game, regardless of what you've looted around the area or the zombies you've killed, everything respawns back again, including the zombies. And it started to really get annoying because I'd clear a section of zombies that, I'd come back 5 minutes later to, and they'd all be there again. And there was no real continuity in what I was doing, and that it was essentially game breaking. It put me completely out of the immersion because I'd be like, oh, that suitcase that I just looted a few minutes ago already has something new in it, and
yeah, that's not great.
Yeah,
like
and
you know,
for a follow-up
respawning
game,
enemies is like respawning enemies is kind of fine. You know, plenty of games have that, but like you've got to at least pretend that it's like there's some consistency.
And it did really feel like a bit of a cookie cutter situation with that and the first game. So I was, I had it because I think I got it on, Humble Bundle or it was on special for like $2. So I was just like, cool, I like the first one. I'll give this one a go.
Did they ever make a Dead Island 2?
That was number 2. That was the sequel.
Ah, it's actually number 2, right?
It is actually the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, the story didn't really go anywhere. It was very, very camp. It was very, very sort of over the top, like typical, the military coming in now to shut all this down, but we're still on this island. And it's like, this is just a trope that's just been done over and over again. So it didn't really appeal to me. And the voice acting is horrible. So it didn't have much going for it this time around. From that, though, I did give Timmy's recommendation of a mobile game, a little series called The Room. I won't go into it much because you guys have been talking about it at length since before I joined the pod. But Room 1, 2, and 3, I all really, 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 really loved. The puzzles were great. You feel really accomplished once you do figure something out. Even up until number 3, I didn't find them particularly challenging, except.
I was just going to say that the kind of puzzles that they're not too challenging, but they're easy to overlook something. So you can sit there with the interface spinning around for 20 minutes, and then you see like a button that you thought was just like a shadow or whatever, and you go, I should have slowed down. That's so right, obvious, and then away you go. But it's enough to, like you said, make you feel accomplished.
Yeah, and for the most part, I played it with the hints off. However, there were times where I was just like, there is something minuscule that I am just not seeing, and it would mostly be something that, like you said, you completely overlook it. It's not necessarily your lack of being able to figure something out. It's like, well, I didn't know that there was something in that dark corner. So, I'd have to turn it on every now and then to get through some of those situations. But in all honesty, I really, really think it was just a great I haven't played Old Sins yet, but it's a great story. It's a great little sort of world that they've weaved for you to sort of explore.
Did you play these on mobile? Because they're on PC, aren't they?
I play these all on mobile.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
I think they probably are on PC now.
They are, yeah. They're
like you want a touch screen for them. The way that interface works, like it's built for mobile.
Especially when it asks you to tilt things and tilt the phone or swiping things, and it pulls you into the environment a little bit more, even though you're sort of not doing much more than what you would on a computer. But when you can sort of feel the feedback from the game. Yeah, it pulls you in a little bit better.
When I played we talked about this before. When I played the kind of free demo of this and Birdcage and some others, like a massive part of those is how tactile they feel. Like you are turning the knobs, and it's like there's a physicality to those games that I think you would lose if you have a mouse between you and that interaction.
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially because when you play those games, a lot of them start with kind of like a dollhouse looking thing, and you might get sucked into another level. And it being tactile like that makes you feel like you were saying, that bit of immersion. If you're sticking with a mouse or whatever, it just feels like, all right, level 2 kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's some people it's all about your own level suspension of disbelief. So different for different people. But I agree with you, Paul. I would be taken out of that. JT, just before you move on from The Room, I wanted to ask you, although it's not overt, I have always got a bit of a Lovecraft vibe from the type of horror that they have in this game, because they never tell you what it is. You're kind of finding these old-timey letters and journals from somebody who's like left them behind for you to find. And it's this omnipresent evil that you always feel kind of watching you and aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
You never really understand the full scope, just that you need to stop it, you know?
And yeah, it is. I got that vibe heaps. And I even went into sort of some of the fandom to look into it to see if it was actually meant to be part of, say, the Lovecraftian mythos, which it isn't, but it's obviously heavily drawn from it. But especially when it comes to things like, without giving away hopefully too much, where you're sort of your character then starts to question his own sanity in what he's experiencing, which is, you know, a very Lovecraft thing to sort of throw into a game.
Okay, I'm literally now moving the room onto the home screen of my phone so that I remember to give this another go, because this sounds really interesting. I played the free sort of tutorial thing, but then I think you had to pay for anything beyond that, and I enjoyed it, but I just kind of forgot about it. So yeah, all right.
When you go to buy it, Paul, I'm pretty sure you can buy the first 3 in a bundle now, and it's like pretty cost efficient.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. And also, I should just mention, in case like it's the Lovecraft thing that's kind of like tipped the scales there for you, they really develop that kind of slowly. Like the first one is a bit creepy, but not really like that. And then by Old Sins, it's all popping off. So it kind of like the threat grows. So yeah.
Yes. Each one builds on the last, I would say, in a really, really positive way. So after from that, going back onto PC, I played for probably about 10 or 15 minutes a game called Daggers, which I got as part of a Humble Bundle. A lot of the games on my library are from the Humble Bundles, usually because there's a couple games I'm like, oh, I really want that, and then there's a bunch of sort of filler stuff that comes with it. This game, it's cool. Like, I enjoyed the 10 to 15 minutes I played for it, but I just couldn't commit to much more because there is really only one mechanic to the game. It's a first-person shooter. You're in sort of like an arena, and you just spawn in. There's no story whatsoever, and sort of hellish monsters start attacking you. Once you take damage, that's it. You have to start over. So it's like one of those see how long you can last type games with enemies and power-ups slowly, you know, becoming more and more abundant and more powerful. However, it just wasn't for me. I don't really think there's too many people who would be able to really apply themselves to this kind of game, because you don't really get that much of a reward from it, other than I think once you die, it lists off your high score in the world and amongst other friends who have it. So it wasn't that great. It's a cool style though. It's like a pixelated sort of Doomish looking game. So you know, it's, you know, if it's on special for like $1 or something, definitely have a look at it if that sounds like it's your thing, but probably a bit too mundane for my tastes. And yeah, I mean, those are the sort of the smaller things that I've been playing. Oh, actually, before I get into what's happening with the alphabet situation on Steam, one game that I did come across that I've really, really enjoyed is Death Road to Canada, which I had on PC. I started playing on PC, but I liked it much more as the idea of a mobile game, so I ended up forking out, I think it was $23 on the Apple Store for it, which is a big purchase for me.
Yeah,
and
that is a lot for a mobile game.
Yes, and it's really, really good. I'm not sure if anyone knows what an old game called the Oregon Trail is.
Oh yeah.
The Oregon Trail?
That's kind of legendary, right? It was like on when computers, just black and green, and it was almost text-based, but you saw a little bit of it, and it was a recreation of the Donner Party, who ended up eating each other to survive, right?
That's right, and it's actually sort of one of the first real survival games, because even though it's an educational game at heart, the aim of the game is to build up supplies and stocks, and then in between each stock, a string of events happens that dwindles your supplies, or an event happens and someone dies or is injured or maimed.
Sorry, are you talking about Death Road to Canada or Oregon Trail?
Oregon Trail, but
Okay,
this
all right.
Death Road to Canada is very similar because there was a game released, I think, in 2011 called the Oregon Trail, which is a zombie version of, like a tongue-in-cheek zombie version of Oregon Trail, where you're in a station wagon and you're trying to cross America in a zombie holocaust. So it's got the same mechanics. But Death Road to Canada is the next sort of iteration from that, where you're trying to drive to Canada where it's supposedly safe. But they've also implemented recruitment into it, so you can build up a squad. You actually get to go on the missions and hunt for food, kill zombies, and it's really unforgiving. So it's like, you've got 15 days to Canada, and then at each stop it'll be like, well, we need to stop for supplies. Where are we going to stop? And it gives you a list of places you might want to stop at. So it'll be like, do we want to stop at the shopping mall? Do we want to stop at the service station? Each one of them has their pros and cons, how many zombies there are, what kind of loot you're going to get. And then you build up your loot on that mission. And then once you finish it, your people are sent on a string of events that, very rarely good things happen. So you it's a bit of a management game. You're trying to manage your supplies to make sure you can get through each leg. But it's also really funny as well. Like, there's, the characters can be dogs, but they talk and they have morale and they can wield knives and stuff. And it's, massive replayability as well. So I haven't even come close to finishing the game. But it's all about the sort of the ride there, I guess. So.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is it the kind of thing where you're expected to sort of finish it, or is it kind of like a roguelike where you're expected to die and then restart?
It's a roguelike, so
okay,
you die and restart, but obviously you're restarting completely every time you play it. However, along the way you can earn these little things called zombo points, which you can spend before your next journey or your next game start to unlock different abilities. And then, so it's not like unlocking a new ability that's going to buff your character so much. It's just unlocking a range of new situations that can happen during the trip.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So yeah, I can't recommend it enough. Like, even at that price point, I feel like most people would probably get a decent amount of enjoyment out of it. And it's, it's the perfect sort of game to play on the bus ride home or something. So I've just been playing it in my breaks at uni and on the bus, and it's been a great little slug. Yeah. I'm not sure if anyone else has played anything similar. Did you end up playing Oregon Trail, Timmy?
No, I've never played it, but it's one of those games that's referenced in everything, that whole "you have died of dysentery," I think became like almost a meme in and of itself, like maybe 10 years ago or so. Like, it's always when someone needs to it's one of those games that in a typical comedy movie, when someone needs to prove that they're a nerd or they've got some street cred, like in the computer world, they talk about that game or whatever it is. If it's a show where they're flashing back to college in the 80s, it's on someone's computer screen. Like, it's just it's one of those games that I've absorbed through osmosis. Like, I know enough about it that I know it's ludicrously difficult and borderline unenjoyable, and I don't need to play it.
Yes. But you should play Death Road to Canada. So
okay.
The only thing I've played that sounds similar to that is This War of Mine, which is that I don't know if you guys have played this. I thought maybe JT you might have seen it. It's like I
know what it is, but I never played it.
Yeah. It's like a survival game set in a country during a war, and you basically play as a person who is just trying to survive, and you have like a house you have to maintain, and you go out on scavenging missions, and it's kind of like it's like a 2D platformer in terms of how you view it and the gameplay, but it's like super unforgiving and super brutal. And I've played a bit of that, which you talking about Death Road to Canada kind of reminded me of that, but I think from what I could tell, I think they're still quite different sort of things.
Yeah, Death Road to Canada's very much, you're not really in control of the characters except for on those small missions. Most of the game is actually looking at just a sequence of events that happens, and you making multiple an event will happen. It'll say, "What do you want to do here?" Which goes into another event, and then it just sort of keeps stringing along. So a lot of the game, you're just watching things happening, and then it'll throw you into a bit of action every now and then.
And can I just ask, you mentioned when Paul asked about it being like a roguelike, and that the aim is to like get as far as you can, and then you have to start over. Is there an end state? Like Oregon Trail, you could get there. It was ludicrously difficult, but it was technically possible. Can you make it to Canada in this? Do you know?
Yeah, you can. It gives you it has a number on the screen at all times, which tells you how many days are left. And then when you make it there, I'm not sure what happens, but I assume the game is over. And there might be some kind of fanfare or something that happens, but I'm yet to reach that. I think the most I've gotten so far is 9 days left, but it gets really hard. There's stuff like, for instance, I had a team of 3 people. One of the person's morale wasn't very good, and it's actually cool. You don't know what people's stats are until something happens, and then it reveals to you. So you can't really plan at the start of the game how you're really going to play it. But what happened is we came across some bandits and or a group of bandits, and I can't remember one thing or another happened, and my guy, based on the decision I made, decided to join the bandits, and then I got mugged by him and the bandits who were part of the event, and then he was just gone. And so then it was just me and this other person. So it's a lot of little just funny sort of anecdotes that happen along the way that still affect the mission. So yeah, it's good. I do like it. Now, in terms of my alphabetical Steam quest, I am throwing in the towel with that, just like Paul has with Thronebreaker.
Such disappointment, JT. We were going to have a theme song and everything.
Yeah, I know. We had a lot planned for it.
Like Timmy, we spent all weekend in the studio working on that theme song. Like we had the band in and everything. Man,
you're going to have to reimburse us for the studio time. Is all I'm saying.
That's right. I'll trade in all these games I'm going to play.
J.J. Abrams come in and reboot the national anthem just for that.
Did you stand or sit? Now, the problem at the core of doing an alphabetical run through of your Steam library is that it becomes a chore. No matter how much you enjoy some of the games you play, you always know that there is a list of other games that you're going to be playing in between the next one you enjoy that you probably won't enjoy or even really be that enthused about loading or installing. And that's kind of what happened. It started probably with Crusader Kings 2, because, I mean, I could talk at length about that game, and that might be, sort of a theme for another podcast. But that's when I sort of realized that I'm going to be coming up against a lot of games that are just going to be a total slugfest. That game in particular, I really, really liked how much you could do, but I really didn't get that much enjoyment out of it whatsoever.
I feel
and
like
the learning curve was just not for me.
I feel like a game like that as well, like you say, like it's interesting and it's probably a game that you would enjoy, but it's a game that you have to want to play. I feel like you can't just I feel like you can't play Crusader Kings 2 because it's next on the list. Like if you're not in the mood for a huge, sprawling grand strategy game that is as much about like managing spreadsheets as it is about anything kind of visual, if you're in the mood for like just something that's a bit fun and mindless, then yeah, of course you're going to bounce off it.
Yeah, that's right. And that sort of, after that, I uninstalled that because I didn't want to be tempted to play it again and then get disappointed with myself in the game. But then I'd started to look down the list more and more, and then I noticed, hang on, a lot of these games I've played before, not because I've played the exact game before, but I've played, for instance, I invested a huge amount of time into Age of Wonders, which is a Civilization-style 4X game, but set in a fantasy setting. And I noticed that in the E section, there's a lot of games under a franchise called Endless. So they've got Endless Legend,
man, those
Endless
games are
Space.
so good.
I really do want to play them, but the problem is that they're so similar to Age of Wonders. Even if they've got some kind of better mechanic, I'm ultimately going to be getting a very similar experience. And so I didn't feel like I really wanted to play them just for the sake of finishing this alphabetical quest. And on top of that, as you're sort of looking down your list, you're getting sort of jealous of some of the other games that you're going to have to wait to play. So in my instance, I really wanted to play Kenshi and Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. As old as it is, I know it's a great game. I know that I'll probably love it. And so I couldn't wait. So I just kind of decided that it was probably time to just stop with the alphabet and then just go straight to games that I want to play, and then remove the feeling of it being like a chore. And it's honestly, it's a bit funny and it sounds dumb, but I have a bit of a weight lifted off my shoulders, as silly as that might sound. But I was like, I don't have to go through this my Steam library and pretend that I'm going to be enjoying the game when I might not necessarily be.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think it's ridiculous to say it feels like a weight off your shoulders. Like, I can understand why it would be. I think that you've been doing this quest for longer than you've been coming on the podcast with us, and so we've kind of been talking about it outside the pod, and it had kind of inspired me to do not something similar, so to not go through things alphabetically, but to just try and play more of games I haven't played. So rather than playing sort of my standard things that I go back to all the time, to kind of look at games that I hadn't played so much of, or not necessarily hadn't played so much of, but games that I have on my Steam library, and I'm thinking that I really want to try that, to kind of give those a go and actually play them. And so I had kind of been doing that recently, and one of the conclusions I'd come to was sort of a bit similar to what you were saying as well, in that there's a couple of games recently, like I went back to Thronebreaker. I also tried to play Undertale, which is a game that I've had on my list to play for a long time. I've mentioned it a few times when we talk about what we're going to play next episode, and I finally gave that a go. And I also kind of came to this realization of I don't need to finish something if I'm not enjoying it. And so Thronebreaker, I kind of got 8 hours into it and was like, I'm not having fun with this. It's going to take me another 20 hours to finish it, rather than slog through 20 hours just so I can, I don't know whether it's so I can say I've finished it. I don't know whether it's so that I feel I get my money's worth. But even if I spent the money on it, it's if I'm not enjoying it, there's no reason to waste the time because the money is already spent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if anything, it's more likely for you to have some regrets about the purchase because you're going to feel like it's sunken or wasted time.
Right.
Which is, a big no-no when you're gaming. It should never be.
Yeah.
I feel like coming to that realization is really freeing in a lot of things. Video games especially. I have heaps of video games that I haven't finished and I used to feel really guilty about. But I'm sometimes maybe it's me being too eager to buy the next game. But for some of these games, it's the game's job to win you over, to be engaging, to keep you wanting to play. And if it doesn't do that, you're not obligated to keep playing.
Yeah, exactly. Mine is definitely partially that, what you said. My Steam library is 200 and something games, and it's part of that is, a big part of that is my fault. It's buying games before I've played everything I have. And so I feel like I'm kind of become more aware of that and will try to do that less. But I've also just sort of become more comfortable with starting a game, realizing I don't like it, and stopping. So I started playing Undertale, and I played a couple of hours of it, and I really, really didn't enjoy it. And people have told me it's great, but I was just kind of I'm not having fun. this is supposed to be like a hobby where I enjoy what I'm doing. So even if someone tells me like, oh, the game gets great after like 4 or 5 hours or something, it's like, if it's not worth the time and I'm not enjoying myself, then I'm just going to stop and move to something else. And so, like you say, Timmy, and like you said, JT, about sort of the weight being lifted, it's like that is quite freeing to just sort of be like, this isn't fun. I'm just not going to play this anymore. And I'll move to something else that is fun.
And even with the promise of someone telling you it's worth it at this point in time, it's still not a guarantee,
Yeah. It's subjective,
anyone
right?
can say that. Completely subjective.
Mm-hmm.
But then, on the other hand, I played The Witcher, and I remember telling you guys, I loved The Witcher 3 so much that after 50 hours, my save game got corrupted. And even then, I still played through the 50 hours again to get back where I was and continue the game. So that's a bit of a testament to how much you can enjoy a game, even though you've essentially slugged a huge part of it out. But I would never do that with some of these other games that I've already played.
Right.
So, and they already feel like I'm replaying them or going through some kind of chore in getting through them. So,
and I think it comes down to like that, like whether it's you doing your alphabetical thing, JT, or I was just trying to sort of play some of these games that I have bought and never played. It's like, it's kind of like, in some ways, it's almost like it's the wrong reason to play them. Like, if I want to play it and I enjoy it, then you should play it. But really, like, if you're playing something and you're enjoying it, it doesn't matter if it's like World of Warcraft and it's the only game you've been playing for the last 5 years, or whether like you play a new game every month. Like, if you're enjoying yourself, like, then it's good. Then you're fine.
Precisely.
So that's the long version of why JT is a quitter. But as
sorry, Mum. Sorry, Dad.
they finally let us down. No, but after seeing so we're talking about leaving games behind and moving on to new ones, let's have a chat, as we always do, about what we're going to play before the next episode. And now, normally, that's going to be a month's time away. So you've got a cushy 4 weeks to try something new. But listeners at home, we are moving to doing episodes fortnightly from now on, trying to come to you a little bit more regularly, so the episodes might be a touch shorter as we have less gaming time to discuss. So, JT, in the next fortnight, what are you planning on playing? If not your alphabetical list.
Well, I will be jumping into Kenshi, which I actually have already started to play, and I've got some opinions and reservations about it already. However, given that I'm not going to be talking about it this episode, it's probably a good idea for me to continue playing it and getting a bit more feedback for the game to see if it can change some of those opinions. So I'll be playing that, and I'll be jumping into Knights of the Old Republic, an old Star Wars classic, which by BioWare, masters of multiple choice RPG games.
Yeah,
except Mass Effect Andromeda, and and yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to getting into all the Star Wars games in my Steam list. I'm not going to do them alphabetically, but there are just some classics in there that I'm just like, I gotta go back and play that. I gotta play Rogue Squadron again. I want to play Mysteries of Sith. I know the nostalgia's getting the better of me, so that's what I'll be doing.
Yeah, KOTOR is I have played KOTOR and KOTOR 2 many years ago, and they are such good games. Like, I would, I'm not usually a fan of the kind of remaster culture that we're in, where it's like that seems to be a lot of what we get. But I would be a hypocrite for a KOTOR remaster. That would be great.
Yeah. What about you, Paul? What are you beginning to get into?
Well, I think I will continue playing some Magic Arena, as I talked about, and like I had hinted at before, try and rope some other people into that. I'd also like to get back to our Project Zomboid game, JT, which we've had sort of on the back burner for a few weeks now because we've been busy with other stuff. I'd really like to give that a go again.
Hopefully, just quickly, this is obviously not going to be happening in the next month or so, but when you come back down to Australia, I think it would be cool for us to get in the same room and play some Zomboid in the same room. Even if if Timmy's down, if he wants to come and observe or join, I think it'd be great.
Timmy wants to come and see a real life LAN.
That's going to be probably still played over the internet, but
Yeah, exactly. The other thing that I'm planning on playing, which I have actually started, but only just recently, so I didn't really talk about it at all today, is I have started South Park: The Fractured But Whole. So I really enjoyed. Yeah, I was really hanging out for an RPG after I kind of had this moment, like we talked about before, of deciding that like I'm just not going to play. I'm not going to play games that I'm not really enjoying. That it's not worth my limited time to to only half enjoy something. I was like, I'm craving a good RPG. I've heard this one's good, and I had it there ready to go. So yeah, I've started playing that. Love Stick of Truth, and yeah, I'm a little bit into it. And I'm liking it so far. But yeah, next episode I'll have a lot more to say about that. What about you?
I'm really looking forward to hearing you talk about that, because when I bought the Fractured Butthole, it came with Stick of Truth, which I hadn't played, and so I played Stick first because it was the first one. I played them back to back. I really like Stick of Truth more, but it might be because I played two massive South Park themed RPGs back to back, and so I really want to know, with the distance of years that you've had between the two, how you feel about Fractured.
Right, because then it's not like they're small games, It's not like they're like little budget
Hugely
RPGs.
fleshed out.
Yeah, they're like genuine big RPGs. I think Timmy, from memory, you may have talked about those games on the very first episode of this podcast, so we'll have come full circle to talk about it again. But what have you got planned for the next couple of weeks?
Well, I'm really digging Destiny 2, as mentioned at great length at the start of this episode, so I'll probably continue playing that one. The other game I'm really keen to get my hands on is Remedy have just released their latest game, Control. And
I've seen some of that.
I'm a gigantic Alan Wake fan. I live in hope that Alan Wake 2 is coming someday. And this is kind of hitting some of the similar kind of like Twin Peaks-ish
There's something bigger going on vibe. Is that what you mean?
Except it's like, whereas Alan Wake is like Twin Peaks set in like the country town with like pine trees and mountains and stuff, Control looks like Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, where you get a little bit more like the government kind of side of things. And I'm not saying these games are all related. It's just that Control is set in the Federal Bureau of Control, and it looks like a government organization to do with the paranormal. And it looks very interesting. I don't know what to make of it yet, because it kind of looks like that same sort of mystery, something's going on kind of thriller. But then all the gameplay, like your character can like fly and has telekinesis powers and all sorts of stuff going on. So it looks a bit more action-y than Remedy have done in the past. Of course, that's who did the Max Payne games as well. So they're steadily moving further and further from thriller noir games to action games, but still with that kind of sci-fi element in there from Alan Wake. So I just it's getting good reviews. I thought Alan Wake is maybe the most underrated game I've ever played. I talk about it to anyone who will listen, and only 1 in 10 people have played it. So I'm just really looking forward to that game. Whether I get to it depends on how long Destiny Endgame keeps my attention.
Yeah, so look out for the 3 to 4 hour long Alan Wake special coming from Disc and Dice at any time now, featuring just Timmy.
Yeah.
Now, if you would like to talk to me about Alan Wake, you can email the podcast at discanddice@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter, at Disc and Dice on Twitter, and you can search Disc and Dice on Facebook and find us there, or head to facebook.com/Disc and Dice.
That is right. And as Timmy said, we'll be back in 2 weeks with our we're given fortnightly a go. As Timmy said, we'll see how it works out. Hopefully, it will enable us to be a bit more timely and a little bit better for everyone. So yeah, that's about our podcast for this week. So Timmy, thank you for telling us about all the games you've been gaming.
Always a pleasure. JT, thank you for telling us about all the games you've been gaming.
Paul, thank you for telling us about all the games you've been gaming.
Except that was Timmy.
Oh.
No, we've done it. We've done a triangle there. You thanked me. Thanks, JT. Back to you.
All right, I got lost somewhere in there.
Yeah. Look, it's very confusing. 3 is a big number.
All right. Well, on that confusing note, then we're going to leave it there. So we will see everyone in 2 weeks' time to talk about some games.
Games.
Games.